Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to learn how to do those visuals, those pie charts, bar charts, ways that you can represent your data visually. And this is a great ability to have because a lot of times your boss or some stakeholders that you're working for, they're going to want to see quick, nice visual representations of your data. People tend to really like this. So today we're going to learn how to do some of the most common ones. So if you're in SPSS, you come here to where it says Graphs. That kind of makes sense. So click on Graphs. Chart Builder is actually sort of the new way to do this in SPSS as of the last 3 or 4 versions. But a lot of students like this legacy dialogues here at the bottom. And this is how you used to do these visuals in SPSS several versions ago. So we're going to do that in here just because a lot of people really like this when they're getting started. And we're going to do 4 different kinds of visuals: a bar chart, a pie chart, a box plot, and a histogram. So let's start with a bar chart. Just come here and click on bar. And we just leave the defaults in here on all of these dialog boxes. So just hit define and move on. So here you can it's here where it says category axis. That's where you're going to put the variable that you're interested in. Now, let's consider again level of measurement. We talk about this all the time because it matters. SPSS will do anything you tell it to do. So you have to be the human being and intervene and only do things that make sense. So these variables with little rulers by the side, they're interval ratio level variables, unless they're coded wrong in SPSS, which sometimes happens. So let's look at respondent socioeconomic index, put it here in category axis. Now this is an interval ratio level variable, and a bar chart is a chart that has bars representing each value, each response. So interval level ratio variables have tons of responses, just like the example I've given with GPA. Your GPA might be 1.10, 1.11, 1.12. So there can be a lot of different values that your answer can take, and it makes really hideous bar charts. Just like it makes a terrible frequency table, it makes a pretty nasty bar chart. So once again, you're going to have to remember that if you're dealing with interval ratio level variable, it's not going to be too helpful. You can kind of see the shape of what's going on here, and that's not too bad, but there's something called a histogram that we're going to talk about in a little bit, actually last, and it's actually more appropriate for that. So go back to bar chart, and instead put in a nice ordinal level variable, and these usually start with the word how often, how much. So this one, I don't even know what I'm clicking. How often does the respondent try to persuade others to share views? So there's our nice ordinal level variable. Put it in. And now you can see this is a much more appropriate visual. This is something you would see in the news or in a report. You can quickly glance at this and see how many people said often, sometimes rarely, or never, and get a sense of what's going on. So this works as well for nominal. I'm not going to go through and dig one out, but you can see that this could be do you ride your bike to school, do you take the bus, car, and you can see how many people gave each response. The caution with that is that there's no order. They're going to pop out in an order here, but you need to ignore that. You need to not talk about the shape of the data set because those could be jumbled up and put in any order. This is a nice ordinal variable that we're looking at, so this is the order, and this does represent the shape of the data. As you move toward never, more and more people fall within that category. So often is the very least, and it just kind of builds up toward never. But with a nominal variable, it doesn't make sense to talk like that. So we're going to go back to Graphs, Legacy Dialog, and come to a pie chart. Again, we just take the default here, hit define. Now you could do a pie chart with this too. This how often do you share your views? You could do a nice the pie chart's kind of the home of the dichotomous variables. So sex is kind of a male-female variable, at least in the GSS. So here you have blue is male, green is female. You can see what's going on there. This works with ordinal level variables as well. Like I said, we could put in, we could put in these same how often, how likely type variables, and it works. You just don't want to overcrowd your pie chart. That's the real key. So let's go back to our how questions. Let's switch my view. Again, you can switch your view by right-clicking here and then hitting whichever one isn't checked off. And it will switch between the variable name and sort of the code. So, how likely is the respondent to do something if an unjust law has been considered? Okay, so intervene in an unjust law. And here you can see this works too. Right? You have 4 categories. You can quickly see who said what, and it's pretty good. So you may guess, but I'll do it anyway. How do you think this will work with an interval ratio level variable? Spoiler alert, it's going to be terrible, but just for the sake of making the point, let's do percentage of some college education. This is an interval ratio level variable. Put it in. SPSS will give us results because it doesn't know any better, and it's thinking, and it's thinking, and it's thinking, because it's making so many different categories that you probably won't even be able to see what's going on. In fact, I'll even pause this while it computes and then bring it. And we're back. That took about 2 to 3 minutes, and you can see it's very colorful. You may want to hang this on your wall, but if you presented this to your boss, they maybe would fire you. They wouldn't be happy with you. Nobody's really going to be excited about you doing this. So again, interval ratio level variables, stay away. All you have to really do for that is think, how many categories do I have? And with interval ratio level variables, you usually have a bunch. So is that going to work to shove all these categories into pie chart or bar chart or something? And the answer is going to be no almost all the time. So what do we have for these poor interval ratio level variables? Well, the histogram is kind of an accepted thing to do with interval ratio level variables, and that's because the histogram is, let's be honest, a histogram is a bar chart with the bars stuck together shoulder to shoulder. So it's just packing in the data, and that's why people like it for the interval ratio level variable. And they're using it to see the shape of the data. They're not going to be able to go to each category and say, oh, this is what's going on with each category. But it gives you this curve shape estimating, or sort of averaging out what the shape of your data set is. So you can see here that the peak, this highest point of this curve, this is a bell curve, you're going to see a lot more of this. So this peak is right around 49 or 50. So it kind of shows you the middle. It shows you if you want this nice bell shape, you don't want it pulled one way or the other. So the histogram, you can do it. You can do it for. It doesn't really make sense for a nominal variable, but you could do it. You can do it. Just don't say anything about the shape of the data if you use it for a nominal variable. I've said that twice, so I should say it a third time. If you do a histogram or a bar chart with a nominal variable, don't say anything about the shape because it's not in any particular order, so it doesn't make sense to talk about the shape. If you can do this with an ordinal level variable, you can do this with interval ratio, and you can describe the shape. And we're going to come back to that a lot next week. So we just have one more to go, which is the box plot. And it's here through graphs, legacy, dialogues. And we'll just do simple, just leave your defaults. And this SPSS, I don't love it. It makes you do a category axis. So it's going to divide your variable according to sex, or race, or something like that. I'll just use sex as the variable. So you put that on your category axis, and you choose the variable that you're interested in. And the big caution here is this is not appropriate for nominal variables. And I'll show you why here in a second. But you can do interval ratio variables. That's really the variable you would want to use here. If you put ordinal variables in, it may still do it, but it's not really appropriate. And the reason is because, we'll learn more about this later, but it's computing the 50th percentile, the exact middle, is this dark bar. So you can see that percentage of some college education for males, it's higher on average. This is the mean, and you can see the female average is a little lower. But this is, for all intents and purposes, the biggest number in the data set and the smallest. So you can see that there's kind of the same range for males and females, but for females it's more spread out from, this is well above 80%, almost 30% or something like that. For males, this is spread between mid-50s, maybe up to close to 90 or something like that. So this tan portion in the middle represents where most of the data is packed in. And this goes along with standard deviations and actually really quartiles. And we'll talk about that later on, but for now you know this visual. So just to recap, you have 4 visuals through the legacy dialogues. You can do a bar, you can do a pie chart, you can do a box plot, and you can do a histogram. Just make sure, as always, that you think about the level of measurement you have and if it makes sense to present one of these charts for that variable. And if you have any questions, send me an email or post on the Q&A. Good luck with this.